Can you hear me and see me? From Baruch, Rabbi Yisrael, Harav Menachem Mendel HaKohen. Meir Zev and Chaim Sholem and Menachem Mendel, Yezer Tzvi and Berel and Sholem Ber. Hatzadik, welcome to all of you. Okay, let's go. Laman Ishpater and Katzait. Right, wasting time is only mit der Rabbanon, it's not mit der Reise. So when der Mitzvah can in Mekel sein. We're on page Kuf Yotes. That's what we're holding. It's not capital Kuf Yotes, it's perek Kuf Yotes. Yeah? It's perek Kuf Yotes. Page Kuf Yotes of Derech Mitzvas Hatefilla. We're in the middle of perek Yud. Huh? K'me'al Derech Mashal Ba'adam. I would guesstimate it's 13 lines from the bottom, maybe 14. Now, Rabbi say, I went on this morning, and I made you a new worksheet. What's the pshat? I made you a new worksheet. I took yesterday's worksheet, and I took off the questions from yesterday. The first 4 or 5 questions. The first 4 questions, which when I get to yesterday, they're there in question sheet 36, but they're not there in question sheet 37. So I didn't really make a shinui to the sheet, but I simply brought it up to date. In other words, it's the questions that I wrote yesterday for the whole perek, but I took away the questions that are not negate what we're going to be learning today. Now, Rabbi say, we're actually doing something very, very unusual. We're pashat learning. Instead of talking, we're learning. Last week we talked the whole week. We're trying to learn a bisala, innovating. You know? What, and by the way, I gave a shir last night at 10 o'clock in Vata Tetzava. I know for a lot of you it's late, but for some of you it's not so late. And Sholem Ber was there. Right? Sholem Ber. Berel, as he calls himself, was there. So I'm planning, it's hard for me, but I'm planning to give a shir every night at 10. Rabbi Blau, you probably have the class recorded. If anybody wants to see it later. Good morning, Menachem Mendel Ezra, Mazel Tov. V'yikodesh ma b'Yisrael.
One is named Shoshana Noya.
Shoshana Leah.
Shoshana Noya.
Noya, and the other one?
Elisheva Abigail.
Elisheva Abigail. Miriam. Okay. They should help them that they should be healthy. They should be easy to raise, and they should bring your parents a lot of nachas. They should bring themselves a lot of nachas. They should bring the Eibishter a lot of nachas. They should bring the Rebbe a lot of nachas. And the Ikkids, they should grow up in the world of Mashiach Tzidkenu B'Tei V'Nida V'Nigla. Lamata Masada Tfachim. We missed you terribly. And Rebbe for Mazel Tov. Your mother's okay?
Yeah.
She's home?
Yeah.
You should know people don't think much about childbirth because it happens millions of times a year. It's a nes. It's a nes. And it's a sakone. I'm sort of stay with everybody. It's more than 3 days already, right?
It's a week.
Yeah, okay, Baruch Hashem. No, if it's a week, she's not so weak anymore. Okay, I'm not going to tell you what I would tell your mother if she was here about taking care of her health. But it's good that you're helping her. Okay, So we're going to push her to learn. Yeah? And here's how we're setting this up. This is what we did yesterday. We had a maimer which spent kama v'kama parakim, perek beis, perek gimel, perek dalet, perek hey, perek vav, perek zayin, perek ches, and perek tes, talking about tefillah. And it explained to us the Inyan of Yedim L'chavim B'Shem. And then it added, very importantly, based on the Shas L'Tshuvas HaRivash, that Yedim L'chavim B'Shem is not optional. It's not a choice. It's a hechrech. If you're not going to be B'chavim B'Shem, nothing is going to happen. Why? Because the Tzemach Tzedek added to the conversation the Inyan of Hilulim. Now, Rabbi Sai, good morning, Yisrael Tzemach Shlita. In perek Yud, the Rebbe started talking about Yechudim. What's the difference between Yechudim and L'chavim B'Shem? The difference is that L'chavim B'Shem has to do with Tefillah. And Yechudim has to do with Kavanas HaMitzvahs. So there are different areas of Yiddishkeit, right? Davening to the Eibishter and the Kavanah that you have in a mitzvah are quite different. Nevertheless, the Rebbe says the same principles, so to speak, that applied by Tefillah and Yedim L'Chavim B'Shem also apply by mitzvahs and yichudim. And what is that? Bekitzer or B'Klolos, the Hasnish Kabreda. It's not optional. You have to use yichudim. So yesterday we had a whole half a page we learned, right? L'Cha'eda, Eidin Seif is so much higher than Atzilus. So why are we wasting our time with yichudim? And the teretz is because you're not being miyached midas with midas, chochma with bina. You're being miyached the Eidin Seif in chochma with the Eidin Seif in bina. And then the Rebbe continued and he asked again in the middle of page Kufit as v'im yeimar ha'emer l'chayre take yichudim doesn't mean to the midas, it means to the Eidin Seif. But why do you have to be mechaven that the Eidin Seif which is in chochma should come into the Eidin Seif which is in bina? Why can't you just be mechaven that the Eidin Seif stam should come directly into bina? And the answer is because it's not going to happen. If the Eidin Seif, the way the Rebbe says it here is, if the Eidin Seif is come directly from Eidin Seif into Bina, it'll be Mevatlet. It's just not going to work. In order for the Eidin Seif of Chochmah to come in, in order for the Eidin Seif, the extra Eidin Seif, to come into Bina in a constructive rather than a destructive way, you have to be Miyached Yechudim, has to come through Chochmah. And the Rebbe begins today's Shir, Kamei al Derech Mashal Ba'adam. I'm reading inside Rabbi Yisai. It's mamish in the middle, yeah? For example, by a person. Let me count. It's page Kufya Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. It's 13 lines from the bottom of the page. So mentioned, for example, by a person, yesh seichel, umides, umachshava, v'dibur, u'mais. Those are 5 levels. A person has intelligence. And a person has emotion. And a person has thought. And a person has speech, and a person has deed. Im hayois, even though shakul on all of them, shor shonam mekeda mea nefesh atzma, their root and source, it's from the neshama itself. And l'chayre yukataine. Why does my machshava have to come from my mides? Why does my mides have to come from my seichel? Why does my bina have to come from my chochma? Let it come straight from the nefesh. Nevertheless, hamshach as eida nefesh b'teichan, the way the light of the neshama and the nefesh comes into each one of these 5 levels, it's dafke through the chain. First of all, the light of the nefesh goes into the mind and the intellect, the intelligence, and afterwards through the intermediacy, in the middle of the seichel of the person, then the light of the neshama, which first came into the seichel, comes into the mides, lezachachon, to purify them, ulataknam, and to make them healthy and whole. And the Rebbe continues and he says, please look inside, v'lei yumshech me'an nefesh b'mides, there is no way, or it's very difficult, to bring life straight from the nefesh into the mides, shalei, ayedei amtzoas hasech, without the intermediacy of the brain. Kanira ba'alil, that's the fact of life. You can't have midas straight from the neshama. The midas have to come from the seichel. Because it brings the ayir perek, or the yaled, yulad, or yivale, the human being is created. Ayir perek. Ayir perek means a wilde donkey. A wild ayir. Ayir is a kind of a donkey or a horse. And a person went wild. He doesn't naturally know what's the correct way to direct his midas. What he should want and what he shouldn't want. The midas of a person by themselves are feral, are wild. When the midas pass through the seichel, nimshach eir hanefesh. Light comes from the nefesh, letaken hamidas, to correct the midas. L'saves dvorim gedalim, to desire great things. Sheroy l'saves aleim, that it makes sense that a person, a human being, should desire them. V'limes dvorim, and to be disgusted by such things. She'ein re'uyim, that are not pastnished. It doesn't fit for a human being. Hagam shemitad midas atzmon, even though if the midas were left all by themselves without the intermediacy of the brain, he would desire them, but because he has a seichel also, he knows, in Yiddish, what's yom, what's nish, what's right and what's wrong. Which also explains another thing, that a katan, a child, shesichle katan, whose brain is very small. This is mentioned in Tanya in the beginning of Perek Vav. Misavel advarim ketanim, desires little insignificant things because he has a small brain. If you have a small heart, mind, you have a small heart. When the brain grows, yimeis beis and advarim will be disgusted by those things. V'yisava, and he will desire what one should desire, which is avas havaya, not to love pizza, but to love the Eibishter. La'avas Hashem, to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ula'avdei, and to serve him b'chulu, k'mei like it's written in the pasuk. Lefi sichla yehelel ish v'gemer. The title of these words is based on one's intelligence. That's the way a person honors himself. Yehelel means a person, literally means a person is praised, but yehelel means to shine. The intelligence of the person is revealed through the person's actions. Now I'm going to come back to this later on. Only when you first have emotions, can a person have a constructive thought, a thought that's useful. It's impossible for a person to think about something. Built unless before he has some kind of desire and some kind of will in this thought. Based on the feelings and the desire in the heart, that's how the person is going to think. If the person is going to think about something which is loving and thirsting, or anger and critical, being critical, or his spiders or the boast. So you think what you feel. So by Mele you have to have midas before machshav. And then he continues, speech, makaba de machshav receives through thought, dafke, because bilti efshe, there's no way for the light of the neshama to come into speech. You don't think first. If you don't speak, you think. You cannot speak. You have in Tanya an Igeres HaKedesh which is called Ha'oisias HaNiglas Vanastaris. It's Igeres HaKedesh Yutes. It's a Hisof at the end of the Igeres HaKedesh. It's one of it. And in that Igeres HaKedesh, the Alter Rebbe speaks about Oisias HaMachshava, Sheba Machshava, Eis HaDibah, Sheba Machshava, and Eis HaMaisa, Sheba Machshava. And one of the things the Alter Rebbe says here, it's impossible for a person to speak if he didn't think first. And then he adds, usually you think and you speak right away. It's possible, Take, that a person should think and speak later. But if you don't think, you can't speak. It's not possible. Good morning, Menachem Mendel, Minnesota. Welcome. If you don't think first, you cannot have speech later. And then he continues. Stop. Stop. Okay, Mori, let's talk about this mashal. Let's talk about this mashal. This is the end of the mashal, right? Let's talk about the mashal. L'cha'oira, what you have to add to this mashal is that there's really two different processes in this, right? What the Rebbe is describing is what you and I would call hishtalshelus in nefesh of a person. Where do you have hishtalshelus in the nefesh of a person? First seichel, then midas, then machshava, then dibur, then mais. And he says you got to go step by step. You have to go gradual. You can't go straight from the nefesh to midas or to machshava or to dibur to mais. You have to go from midas to seichel, and of course seichel is made up of chokhmah and bina, and then the midas, the higher midas, the lower midas, then machshava, then dibur, then mais. That's what the Rebbe is describing. And he describes it in terms of tikkun. I already have seichel, and I already have midas. If I don't use my seichel of my midas are vild. I already have midas. I already have machshava. If I want my machshava to be constructive, it's to come from the midas. But l'cha'eda, there's two things. In other words, the Tzemach Tzedek says only one thing, and we're going to split it into two. And of course, the makar of this is Tanya Perek Nun now, chapter 51 in Tanya. Where the Alter Rebbe talks about the eslapjas of the neshama in the guf. The two things are as follows. Number one, life comes from the neshama to the guf, right? Life comes from the neshama to the guf. The guf is, as Rashbat used to say, azudik and zak mit fleish and beiner. The Rashbat was a special chassid. He was the personal tutor of the Rebbe Rashab and the Rebbe Rayatz, and he was in Mishlei Mishalom. He was full of Mishalom. The Rashbat was, and the Rashbat said, What's a person? A boiling sack of meat and bones. A zudik and zak from flesh and bein. A human being is a boiling sack of meat and bones. That's it. Was is a mensch? A zudik and zak from flesh and bein. A boiling sack of meat and bones. Nothing. A person is a person because he has a neshama in the guf. Because he has the neshama in the guf is living. Now, Rabbi said, listen carefully to me, okay? And if someone will do me a favor, just give me a thumbs up that you can hear me, I would appreciate it. Okay, very good. Now, the neshama goes into the guf, two things happen. And by the way, when I tell you two things happen, tomorrow I'll tell you three, and the next day four, and then after that one. For this conversation, it's two things, okay? For this conversation, it's two things. The neshama comes into the guf, and two things happen. Number one, the whole guf is alive in a second. In 1 second, the whole guf is alive. The whole guf. From the top of the head, from the first hair to the bottom of the toes. This life, which envelops the whole guf, is called chayes kloli. General life, which envelops the ganze guf, meten greise shos. The whole body is living. And of course, Lamaila Chayes Kloli is called Seviv Kol Almin. The Eibishter's Oyer comes into the world from the Makifim of Ak until dort in the Beyei Kinim, which are in Tabor Oretz, till Asiyah Sheba Asiyah. The Eibishter envelops the whole Sefer Hashas in one shot. So when the Neshama comes into the Guf, there's also a similar idea. The entire Neshama envelops the entire Guf. The ganze Guf leapt. The whole body is alive. This is called Chayes Kloli. And from this Bechina, you have the idea which you know as Chai Noise Yasatzmei. A living being carries himself. Chai Noise Yasatzmei means that when a person's neshama is in his guf, even if he's chas v'shalom in a coma, the body is lighter than the body of a dead person. On the scale, they weigh the same amount, but there's a tev of Chai Noise Yasatzmei, and that has to do with the Chayes Kloli, with the save of Kolam. Now, but then there's another life. And the other life is very, very different than the former, than the first. How so? The first life is the whole goof at once, in one shot, from the top to the bottom. The second life is called Chayes Prati, individuated life, specific life. And Chayes Prati, of course, Lamaila is called Memale Kol Almin, the opposite of Seviv Kol Almin. And Chayes Prati goes into the brain. The Chayes Prati of the Nefesh, all of it goes into the brain. And the brain acts as a divider and a distributor. The brain does basically two things. Now, of course, you know that basically is a bad word. But since I'm the one who said that basically is a bad word, I'm allowed to say whatever I want. Yeah. The Chayes Prati in the brain does basically two things. Number one, the brain divides up life into three parts. One part he keeps for himself, one part he sends to the heart and the lungs, and one part he sends to the liver and the kidneys, which in Kabbalah terms is neshama, and ruach, and nefesh. The neshama stays in the brain, the ruach is in the heart, and the nefesh is in the kidneys and in the liver. That's the first thing that the Chayes Kloli does. It divides it up into three. After it divides it up into three, the part that the Chayes Prati kept, he divides up into more parts. One part goes to the right side of the brain, that's Chochmah. Another part goes to the left side of the brain, that's Bina. Another part, or two parts, go to the back of the brain, the right side of the back of the brain, and the left side of the back of the brain, and that's Das. Another part goes to the eyes, and that's Keach HaRi'iyah. Another part goes to the ears, that's Keach HaShmiya. Another part goes to the nose, that's Keach HaReach. Another part goes to the mouth and the tongue, which is the Keach HaTam and the Keach HaDibur and other things. Okay? And then each piece of the body gets a distinct and individuated kind of life. And the same is true in the heart and the lungs. The heart and the lungs get a package of life, which then they divide up. One part goes to the heart, one part goes to the right ventricle of the lungs, one goes to the left ventricle, one goes to the right hand, one goes to the left hand, one goes to this finger, one goes to the other finger. This is called Chayes Prati in the Madrega of Ruach. And the same is true also in the Kavod and in the Kloes, the kidneys and the liver. They get a Chayes Prati, which is called Nefesh, and they divide it up. One part goes to the kidneys, one goes to the liver, one part goes to the spleen, and to the intestines. One goes to the right leg, one goes to the left leg. V'chuli, v'chuli, v'chuli. So it's a system of steps. You understand? So there is one type of life which envelops the whole body in one instant. This is called Chayes Kloli, and it's a mashal for Sevav Kalam. And in Koiches HaNefesh, it's called Ratzon. Ratzon does not have a place in the body. Ratzon is not in the brain. Ratzon, which really, practically speaking, to a great extent, means reflex, instinct, reflex, guts, visceral responses. Is all over the goof at once. Because this is the Chayes Kloli. Then there's Chayes Prati. And when it comes to Chayes Prati, there's steps. First of all, it's divided up into 3. And second of all, each of these 3 are divided up into smaller and smaller parts until you have Ramach Eiverim and Shasagidim, each one having a different Chayes Prati that came to it through the various different steps. Okay? Now, that was not hard, but I need you to be kind enough and to say, Amen. Okay, thank you. Appreciate the fact that you're listening. So now, when it says here in our Maimer, the Moshel of Adam, you can't bring the Neshama straight to the toe. Doesn't work that way. Understand that when you say you can't bring the Chayes HaNefesh straight to the toe, you're talking about Chayes Prati. Because when it comes to Chayes Kloli, it's Taka B'chol Mokem B'Shoveh. In one instant, it fills up the whole goof. But when it comes to Chayes Prati, here you say, wait a minute, there's steps. And with Avgein Pavola, you have to go step by step. Stupe noch stupe, one step and then another step. How the Chayes goes into the brain, and then the brain distributes it into 3 parts, and each of these 3 parts split it up into more parts, until it reaches the Shairis and the Tziponayim, and the Ekev Shabaraglayim, the different parts of the body reach Chayes that's specific to them, but it goes through steps. You don't say that the Beli Gvul of the Nefesh gives Chayes to my left pinky. You said that the Beli Gvul of the Nefesh is Maslabish in the Moyach. And the Moyach divides it up into 3 parts. And the middle of those 3 parts is called the Ruach, which is Maslabish in the Lev. And from that Ruach is divided further. So there's the heart, and then there's the lungs. I don't know what other Evari Nishima there are, but Mestama there are others. And then there's the right hand, and then there's the left hand, and then there's the right fingers and the left fingers, and the pinky on the left hand. So it goes through steps. These steps are negayah to life itself. You know why there's life in this here pinky? And I can move it. I can look, you see I'm moving my pinky. Now you look at me doing this and you think I'm 2 years old and I'm wasting my time. We don't have enough brains in our entire head to understand the miracle of this motion. The amount of things that goes into making anything move organically is staggering. It's unbelievable. The Eibishter made that because of this property called Ratzon, called Makif, we do it without realizing what we're doing. But it's piliploim that you can move your finger like this. Now, if my finger only had Chayes Kloli and not Chayes Prati, my finger would be warm, my finger would be alive, but my finger couldn't move. The Chayes Kloli would keep it alive. The Chayes Prati makes it into a movable finger that can be used to accomplish various different tasks. It's called in English to be dexterous, dexterity, that you can use your fingers to what they call in early intervention education, fine motor skills. There's gross motor skills and there's fine motor skills to move your fingers, to cut a piece of paper, to hold a pencil, things that nobody thinks twice about. These are kishraynes that a person has to learn. The Eibishter gave us the ability to learn them, but you have to learn them. And if chas v'sholom a person can't, it's a big problem. And the chassidus shebadavar is there's a Chayes Prati in my finger, a life which is specific to my finger that makes that happen. Now, the Tzemach Tzedek doesn't say anything that I just said. What I just told you in the last 10 minutes, Tzemach Tzedek doesn't mention at all. So why did I say it? The Teretz says I like to talk. That's the Teretz. But I didn't make it up. I would love to make it up. I'm just not smart enough. It says in Tanya, Perek Nun Aleph, chapter 51 in Tanya. And of course, there's my Mari Chasidus that explain it even more, like Tavshin Samach Gimel and Tavshin Ches, and then Bosel Lagani Tavshin Lamed. If you guys are familiar with this story, the history, that 20 years after a Rebbe becomes a Rebbe, there's a Mesorah that you say a maimer on the inyan of Chayes Kol and Chayes Prati. So Tafresh Samach Gimel was 20 years after the Stalkus of the Rebbe Maharash. So the Rebbe Rashab and the Mamorim of Rosh Hashanah spoke the inyan of Chayes Kol and Chayes Prati. And the Friedrich Rebbe adds that in the Sukkah, the first night Sukkahs, the Rashbatz, who I mentioned before with the Misholim, was sitting in the Sukkah. Rashbatz was an old chassid at this point, and Rashbatz blurted out, it platzed out of his mouth, Ben Esrim Velimke Benichseyaviv. It was 20 years since the Stalkus of the Rebbe Maharash. So Rashbatz blurted out, Ben Esrim Velimke Benichseyaviv, am evet 20 Jahre. So the Friedrich Rebbe writes, my father didn't react, but his face changed. He didn't say anything. But you saw that at the head, that Rebbe Maharash passed away Erev Shavuos, Sukkot. Rebbe Maharash passed away Yud Gimel Tishrei. So mamish 24 hours later, 30 hours later, whatever it was, sitting by the Sukkah, the Rashbatz blurted out. Rashbatz was an old chassid. He was chassid for Tzemach Tzedek, but he was a big chassid. Ven Esrim Velimke Benichseyav. So that year, the Rosh Hashanah, Rebbe Rashab said Maimorim on the Sugi of Chayes Kol and Chayes Prati. In Tov Shin, the Maimor of Beis Nissen, I forgot what, I think it's called a Chodesh. In New York, the Rebbe Rayatz also spoke the inyan of Chayes Kol and Chayes Prati. And there's a Sikha where he explained that the Zayed the minute that every Rebbe, when he was 20 years to the Nesias from his father, would say Chayes Kol and Chayes Prati. So in Tov Shin Lamed, in the Maimor Bosni Lagani, the Rebbe also spoke the inyan of Chayes Kol and Chayes Prati. And there you have the heart and the footnote, which tells the story that nach 20 Jahren darf man not inyan from Chayes Kol and Chayes Prati. Why, I don't know, but this is the Metzias Advarim. And this is the source of what I'm just told you. In other words, I didn't make it up. The state in Tanya, Be'ikroni steht es in Tanya perek nun Aleph, and the Bisuse steht es in these Maimorim that I just referenced, and there's more. Tovshin Ches is based on Samach Gimel, for the Friedrich Rebbe Tovshin Ches, which is really a Hemshech Mesame from Peites, from Riga. It's based on Samach Gimel. You had the sugi of Chayes Kol and Chayes Prati, but Friedrich Rebbe Marichas Gedel. Now, but that's not what the Rebbe speaks about here. Tzemach Tzedek doesn't say any of this. Tzemach Tzedek says this: you have a goof. Number one, it has a Chayes Kol. It's alive, huh? The whole goof is alive because there's a neshama, a makif, like al derech moshel Chayes Kol, sevev kol alma, that the whole goof is living. Number two, there's a Chayes Prati. There's an individuated life that comes to every Avid and to every chelik of the goof, and it goes through steps, like I explained to you before. It goes into the mayach, and then it's divided up into three, and the three is divided up into more and more until you have a machvesh hasa. None of this does the Tzemach Tzedek discuss. But then comes something else. Now that I'm living, and that I have a brain, and my brain has life in it, has intelligence in it, I have a heart, my heart has emotion in it, I have a keach ha-machshava or levush ha-machshava, I can think, I can speak, I can act. If I want to do something now, whether it's an action or it's a speech, I gotta go through the same chain. We're not talking about the chain that's giving life. We're talking about the chain which is using life. You have a brain. There's life in your brain works. You have to use it. And the more you use it, the edeler the brain will become. The more you use Keach HaChochma, the more you use Keach HaBina, men entwickelt sie, men edelt sie euch. You sharpen them, you refine them, you uplift them, and so forth. Yeah, you have a heart. That's the Herz, and your heart feels. But says the Rebbe, naturally the heart feels very wild emotions, any feeling. But if your brain will educate your heart will feel what it needs to feel, the way it needs to feel it. And the same is true also when your heart is going to direct your thoughts. You can think anything. But if you bring the chayes of the nefesh from your brain to your heart to think, to understand the right inyanim of seichel, to understand them correctly, and to feel emotions in the words of the Rebbe that are bezichel chubabira, they're purified and they're clarified. So then when you think what you're supposed to think and the way you're supposed to think it. And then when you speak what you're supposed to speak and the way you're supposed to speak it. And then when you act in what you're supposed to do, and you do it the way it's supposed to be done. And the Tzemach Tzedek speaks to this. So let's be clear. Tzemach Tzedek does not discuss Chayes Kloli here. Tzemach Tzedek is not even discussing Chayes Perati in as much as it's giving Chayes to the Guf. Tzemach Tzedek is saying, when you want to give more Chayes Perati, when you already have a heart with feelings, you add to the feelings of the heart more feelings through the Moyach. I should feel more. If I am adding in my heart more feelings than I already have, why do I need the brain? That it comes straight from the nefesh. If I am adding more life so that I could think thoughts, why does it have to pass through the heart, and why does it have to pass through the brain? Why can it come directly from the nefesh itself? Says the Tzemach Tzedek, it cannot work. You must have ishtalshelus. You have to have steps. So let's be clear about it, okay? I'm telling you three things, and I want you to be clear. We're not talking about Chayes Kloli at all over here. We're not even talking about Chayes Prati in as much as Chayes Prati gives life. We're talking about Chayes Prati in as much as Chayes Prati uses the Chochmah and the Bina and the Chesed and the Gevura and the Netzach and the Heid and the Machshava and the Dibur. That it should be correct. If you want that what you think and what you speak and what you do and what you feel and what you're passionate about should be richtig, should be the way it's supposed to be, it's got to go through steps. It has to go through steps. And if you skip steps, it's a disaster. If you have feelings in your heart that come straight from the nefesh, it's wild. It's ayir pera adam. Ayir pera adam. Ayir pera wilde behemoth. If you want the midas to be good, that's to pass through the brain. There's something called yichidish benefesh, there's something called midas which are higher than seichel. Yeah, that's a yetzim and a cloud. That's not normal. But normal use of the heart, if it doesn't come through the brain, it's a child, it's an animal, it's a mishuganer, or alle drei zusammen. The will sein normal, wie es darf zu sein, it has to pass through the brain. This is a mushal. This is a mushal. What's the nimshal from this mushal? The nimshal from this mushal is yichudim. You want to bring more Eid Ein Sof to Bina. There's already Eid Ein Sof to Bina. You want to bring more Eid Ein Sof to Bina. And you're saying, I want to bring more Eid Ein Sof to Bina. Why do I have to bring it through Chochmah? Bring it straight from the Ein Sof. You want to bring more Eid Ein Sof to Malchus. Why do I have to bring it through Zoh, which is called Kucha B'richu? I'll bring it from Ein Sof. Says the Rebbe, it's not going to work. You want to bring additional Eid Ein Sof into Bina, or into Malchus, into any Midah, any Sfira, any Partzov. It has to come from the parts of before, which is called a yichud. Because if you don't go in order, it doesn't work. Okay? Now let's read the nimshal. Let's read inside. Or Kmeikein, second line from the bottom of the page, Kuf Yutes. Kmeikein al derech Moshe zeh Yuven Kam Kilam. Same is true in the Mailam. And again, let's be clear. Just like in the Moshel, we're not talking about Chayes Kloli. We're not even talking about Chayes Perati in as much as the Neshama gives life to the different parts of the body. We're talking about the third step, Chayes Prati, to add additional light. From the Chochmah to the Bina, from the Bina to the Chesed, from the Chesed to the Gvura, from the Gvura to the Netzach, from the Netzach to the Haid, and so on. You gotta go through the steps. Says the Rebbe, Yuvan Gamka al Inyin Hamshachas Eid Ein Sof Yud Sfiras. If there's a Kabbalistic idea of bringing Eid Ein Sof into the 10 Sfiras. Now, Rabbi say you already know this expression, because I told it to you before, that it's called Soy Teisvis. Not Soy Shoydish. Not bringing him in a minimum amount of life and light, because that happens automatic. It's Hashem should bring more. And when it comes to the Eibush to bring you more, you gotta have Yechudim. You gotta go through the steps. The Eid Ein Sof has to come into Chabad. Turn to page 238, and afterwards, only through the Chabad. Mikal Mamidis and Ikroim Zoh. The Midis can get what you call Zeir Ampen, the small face. Says the Rebbe, ve'ein derech. And ein derech means it's impossible. Lahagia hashefa b'mides. That the additional Eid Ein Sof should reach the mides, mibli emsois Chabad, without going through Chabad. V'chein ayedei Zoh, and then through the mides, nimshach hachakach lenukva, comes down into Malchus. What is Malchus in Avodas Hashem? Machshava v'dibur v'chol. And if you don't go through the steps, either you destroy or nothing happens. So the Rebbe says, you ask me, why do I need Yichudim? Why can I not bring Eidin Seif directly into Bina or into Midas or into Malchus v'chuli? The teretz is, it's a good idea, it's just not a practical one. It ain't gonna happen. If one wishes to make a yichud and to bring addition of Eidin Seif into Malchus, it has to pass through the Midas. Hanikroyim is Eir Anpin, which are called Eir Anpin. First, the Midas go into Midas of Zoh, which is Kucha B'richu. And then through Midas of Atzilus, which is called Kucha B'richu, Nimshach B'di, but Elia Nikra Malchus, it comes down to the Eibush, the supernal speech, so to speak, which is called Malchus. This is the way it works. It goes through steps. The same is also true that Yichud v'Hamshachas Eidin Seif b'Bina, bringing down Eidin Seif into Bina, tzarich leif the Chachma Davka has to pass through Chachma. So the Rebbe says Yichudim is not optional. It's not a choice. You should understand that if you want to add additional Eidin Seif into the various spheres of Atzilus, you must go from the sphere above it to the sphere below it, which is called Yichudim. I am now 6 lines into page 238. This is the Kabbalistic concept of a Yichud in Chochmah and Bina and a Yichud in Midas of Atzilus and Malchus of Atzilus. Shuinyan Amshachas Eidin Seif, it's bringing down Eidin Seif, the Emtzod, Zivugi, Amidas, the Chol. It only happens through a series of Zivugs, of meetings between a Zochar aspect and an Akeva aspect throughout Atzilus v'chuli. And if you don't do it that way, nothing happens. By the unity of one midah with another midah, Nikasav and Nukva. Misyachdim Mamish. It brings together Mamish, Nei Shem is 2 names. And look what he says now. Havaya va'adnai or Havaya v'elikim. Now those of you who were in yesterday's Shia noticed that yesterday he gave 2 forms, Havaya and Elikim and Havaya Ekeh. Over here he changes. He says Havaya Adnai and Havaya Elikim. You see?
This is referring to Zun.
Very good. Why? Because on the previous page, Havaya and Elikim and Havaya Ekeh were both Chochmah and Bina, both Avo. Here, it's Zun and Avo. That's why he changes. Havaya Adnai is the Yichud of Teferes and Malchus. And again, he uses the word Havaya because Havaya means the Eidin Seif, which is in Teferes. And Havaya Elikim is the same as yesterday, Chochmah and Bina. And by the way, Havaya Elikim could be Malchus as well. Shu Bechines is not just Eidin Seif. This is the manifesting of Eidin Seif. Shebemidas Hanal. In the aforementioned Midas, that it has to go through the steps. Shebazah Meir Ha'ed Begili Yesir. In Midas of Atil, the light is stronger. V'nikra Havaya accordingly is called Havaya. U'b'malchus Meir Ha'ed Betzimtzum Yesir. And in Malchus the light is more Metzumtzum. V'nikra is called Adna. However, Ayedei Zivug HaMidas, by fusing the Midas, Mizgale Bechines Havaya Ba'adnai, the more Eidin Seif which is in Zoh, which is called Havaya, is revealed in Adnai. Hayna Sheb'Shem Adnai. The Eibush is named Adnei, she begins Timtzum Ha'ara, which is a limited amount of life, V'harayet L'hachis Nifradim U'Ba'alei Gvul, to create creations that are separate from the Eibush, which are limited, L'ishtamei Adon Al Keila Chulu, to make him the Eibush, the master of the whole lower world. Yi Yisham Gili Eidin Seif V'Yisanatzim. There should be extra light in Malchus, and the extra light cannot come Kvayachal directly from the Eibush himself, has to come through the Yichud. I'm going to stop right here. Questions or comments?
Rabbi Paltiel, you can make me host.
That's a question and a comment. Kinder, questions or comments? Okay, so go on to your Chadrei Chadorim and Zayt Me'eder Chesedin and Rachmim.
Rabbi Paltiel, I have a question.
Fire away.
I don't really know my